Donald Trump built an empire on illusion, an empire of gold-plated towers, reality TV bravado, and political dominance masquerading as populism. But that empire is cracking, not in whispers or rumors, but in indictments, subpoenas, and collapsing support. The myth of Trump, the myth of untouchable power, of limitless wealth, of legal immunity, is fading fast. And if this opened your eyes, don't just scroll past like this to push the truth into more feeds. Comment your perspective. Your voice is part of the story. Share this with someone who still believes the old myths. Subscribe for more straight talk on power, politics, and the shifts shaping our world. Because silence keeps the cycle going. Awareness breaks it, and together we decide what comes next. And beneath the gold veneer, a crumbling foundation of fraud, debt, and desperation. This isn't just about one man's downfall. It's about a movement tethered to him, unraveling in real time. The Republican Party that once bent the knee now looks for an exit. GOP strategists are sweating, donors are holding back, and primary challengers are circling like vultures. Trump's legal troubles aren't a side story, they are the story. Over 90 criminal and civil actions, state and federal probes, courtrooms instead of campaign rallies, depositions instead of debates. His schedule looks more like a defendant's than a president's, and behind the scenes, the financial rot is deeper than expected. Trump's so-called billionaire image is taking on water fast. Valuation fraud, inflated assets, and real estate schemes under investigation in New York are threatening to blow apart the mythology of the self-made mogul. His wealth isn't growing, it's hemorrhaging. Legal fees alone are gutting whatever is left of his liquidity, while creditors grow wary and business partners flee. The man who bragged about deals is now dodging disclosures, but the legal collapse is only half the picture. Trump's populist fantasy is also facing a harsh economic reality. Under his watch, working-class America didn't rise. It got crushed by rising costs, corporate greed, and stagnating wages. The rhetoric of America First collapsed into tax cuts for billionaires and broken promises for everyone else. And voters, they're not blind anymore. Once fiercely loyal base voters are now asking hard questions. Is Trump really their champion, or just another grifter in a gold tie? Add to that the growing unrest in the streets, protests, labor strikes, grassroots resistance. It's all boiling over. America isn't stable, it's angry. And Trump, once the conductor of that chaos, now looks like its target. The social fractures he exploited are threatening to swallow him whole. The longer the legal system closes in, the more volatile the political fallout becomes. Richard Wolff sees the moment for what it is, not just a personal reckoning for Trump, but a turning point for a country on edge. Trump's decline isn't just political, it's symbolic. It marks the unraveling of a decade's worth of deception, division, and institutional erosion. The very tools Trump used, media spectacle, legal loopholes, cult of personality, are now being weaponized against him. The show is collapsing, the brand is tarnished, and the emperor, it turns out, has no lawyers left who haven't already been indicted. Donald Trump built his political empire on an illusion that he was untouchable, a billionaire above the law, a master dealmaker who could outmaneuver opponents, media, institutions, and even reality itself. But that illusion is cracking. An economist, Richard Wolff, is pulling no punches and laying out just how deep that crack goes. Trump's presidency, his political brand, and his entire persona are not just under attack, they're unraveling from within. This isn't about one scandal, it's not about one indictment, It's about a perfect storm, legal, economic, political, and social, all converging on one man who used to thrive in chaos, but is now drowning in it. Trump's image of dominance, rooted in wealth, power, and invincibility, is fading fast. The myth that nothing sticks to him, that every scandal is just more fake news, that the rules never apply, it's collapsing under the weight of over 90 legal actions. That's not a witch hunt. That's an avalanche. These aren't fringe lawsuits. They include indictments, subpoenas, and criminal investigations targeting everything from election interference to business fraud. Wolff makes it clear, this is the most intense legal pressure any American president has ever faced, and it's exposing something Trump has worked his entire career to hide: just how fragile his empire really is. For decades, Trump's wealth was his shield. It allowed him to project strength, success, and superiority. But now that very empire is under forensic scrutiny. Prosecutors are digging through financial statements, inflating property values, shady loans, and tax records that don't line up. The cracks in Trump's business foundation are not cosmetic. They're structural, and as Wolff points out, once his financial persona collapses, so does his political brand. Because Trump didn't win over millions by policy, he won them over by branding himself as a winner. And winners don't beg for court delays. Winners don't lose business licenses. Winners don't get caught defrauding investors. But that's exactly what's happening. Wolff takes it a step further. This isn't just about Trump, it's about what Trump symbolizes in the broader context of American capitalism, a system where power, money, and influence are used to rewrite rules and dodge accountability. Trump in many ways became the poster child of that system, and now that system is fighting back. Legal mechanisms, long dormant or selectively enforced, are being activated, and the results are tearing down the illusion that one man can be too rich or too powerful to fall. But the economic pressures are only part of the picture. Trump's political foundation is also showing signs of decay. Within the Republican Party, once his iron fortress, loyalties are shifting, quietly at first, then louder. More Republicans are publicly voicing doubts, distancing themselves, or floating alternatives for leadership. The fear that once kept everyone in line is starting to weaken, and that's no small development. Trump's control over the GOP wasn't just based on popularity, it was enforced through intimidation and dominance. But when dominance starts to slip, the entire dynamic shifts. Wolff argues that this erosion of loyalty is a critical sign that the Trump era may be entering its final act. Party strategists are reading the polls, watching court dockets, and asking tough questions. Is this really the guy we want leading the ticket in 2026 and 2028? Can we afford the baggage? The answer is becoming harder to justify, especially when Trump's mounting legal bills, court appearances, and political liabilities start to overshadow any strategic value he once had. And let's be clear, the American public is watching. Public opinion is shifting. Even some of Trump's once loyal voters are reconsidering. They may not be ready to embrace a Democrat, but the idea of 4 more years of legal drama, courtroom appearances, and political paralysis, it's exhausting. Wolff notes that voter dissatisfaction is growing, and not just among progressives. Independents, suburban voters, and even segments of the Republican base are showing signs of fatigue. Fatigue matters. In politics, when the energy drains from your base, momentum dies. And when your opposition is energized, when they smell blood in the water, that's when the balance of power starts to tilt. And Trump, for the first time in years, looks vulnerable. Then there's the social unrest, protests, marches, cultural backlash. The cracks in Trump's persona mirror the cracks in American society. Wolff emphasizes that Trump is no longer seen by many as a disruptor, but as a destabilizer, a man whose chaos is no longer refreshing, but exhausting, a symbol not of revolution, but of regression. The protests aren't just against Trump the man, they're against everything he represents: corporate fraud, authoritarian tendencies, racial division, wealth inequality, and a blatant disregard for democratic norms. Trump's brand used to thrive on that division, but now that same division is starting to engulf him. Wolff draws the line clearly. The crisis Trump is facing is not isolated, it's systemic, and that's what makes it so dangerous for both him and the country. Because when a figure like Trump starts to collapse, it doesn't happen neatly. It fractures institutions, intensifies polarization, and deepens public distrust in democracy itself. And then there's the foreign policy dimension. Under Trump, the U.S. posture on the world stage became erratic and unstable. That chaos hasn't disappeared. It's festering. Allies are wary, enemies are emboldened, and Trump's credibility abroad is as fragile as it is at home. When your own country is dragging you through the courts, your ability to command global respect drops with every indictment. This legal and political spiral raises a much bigger question. What happens after Trump? Wolff doesn't offer a rosy answer. The danger isn't just that Trump might go down, it's what comes next. Will the Republican Party double down on the same authoritarian playbook with a new face? Will Americans rally behind more principled leadership, or will the vacuum be filled with even more extreme voices? The stakes couldn't be higher. Trump isn't just fighting for his freedom, he's fighting for the survival of a political myth that populist rage, financial manipulation, and media theatrics can shield a leader from consequence. But the shield is breaking. The myth of invincibility, the very thing that made Trump so magnetic, is being torn apart in courtrooms, campaign offices, and corporate boardrooms, and the consequences are stacking up. Legal costs are mounting, donor confidence is dropping, campaign momentum is stalling, and public fatigue is growing. The old tricks aren't working. The media spectacles, the grievance-driven rallies, the witch hunt deflections, they're not landing like they used to. People are seeing through the performance, and beneath the bluster, the vulnerabilities are exposed. Wolff's analysis is blunt. Trump's fall would not just be a personal failure, it would mark the unraveling of a political model built on defiance, division, and deceit. That model has poisoned public discourse, eroded trust in institutions, and destabilized American democracy. Its collapse, while chaotic, could be the beginning of renewal, if the country is ready to move on. But that's not guaranteed. Trumpism is not just a man, it's a mindset, and the danger remains that even if Trump goes down, the damage he's done to democratic norms, political accountability, and civic trust will linger. The next chapter depends on whether America chooses to rebuild or continues to fracture. So here's the bottom line. Trump's presidency is in serious trouble. The legal system is catching up. The economy is exposing his financial facade. The political machine that once propped him up is wobbling, and the public finally is starting to turn. Wolff doesn't offer false hope. He doesn't suggest that justice is inevitable, or that America is on the brink of healing. What he offers is clarity. Trump's fall is not just possible, it's happening. Slowly, unevenly, but unmistakably. The only question now is whether the country will confront the moment with the seriousness it demands, or let it pass only to face something even worse in its wake. If you're exhausted from the chaos, if you're tired of watching accountability get delayed, and democracy get degraded, now is the time to act. Share this message. Speak the truth. Demand accountability. Because this isn't just about Trump losing power, it's about whether we still believe in a system where no one, no matter how rich, loud, or powerful, is above the law. And that's the crux of Richard Wolff's warning. If Trump walks away from all of this unscathed, if he somehow escapes the grip of nearly 100 legal actions, financial collapse, and political rejection, then what message does that send? That power protects itself, that the rules don't matter, that wealth isn't just influence, it's immunity. And at that point, we're not talking about a functioning democracy anymore. We're talking about a failed one. Because there are only two outcomes here. Either the law applies to everyone, including a former president, or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, the system is broken beyond repair. Wolff isn't cheering for Trump's downfall, like it's a political win. He's warning that if Trump survives this mess without accountability, it sets a precedent that no future leader will forget, that you can lie, cheat, defraud, and incite, and if you have enough money, enough lawyers, and enough fear behind you, you can walk away clean. That's not justice, that's oligarchy. And the rot isn't just at the top. The fact that the Republican Party, despite everything, still refuses to disown him fully, shows just how deep this crisis runs. They're not standing behind him out of loyalty. They're clinging to him because they fear the base he controls, because they built their political fortunes riding the wave of Trumpism, and now they're terrified of being crushed by it. Wolff exposes this cowardice for what it is, a failure of leadership on both sides of the aisle. Because while the GOP capitulates, many Democrats remain paralyzed, either by procedural caution or political calculation. They want the courts to do the heavy lifting, but the courts move slowly. And the public, they're growing impatient. Every delay, every extension, every motion to dismiss feels like another confirmation that the system bends for the rich, that justice is a luxury, not a principle, and Trump feeds on that disillusionment. He frames every indictment as proof that the deep state is after him, that he's the victim, that his supporters are under attack, and because no one in power is delivering clear, decisive consequences, that narrative still works. That's the danger. Even as the legal system tries to hold him accountable, Trump weaponizes the process itself. Courtroom appearances become campaign rallies. Arraignments turn into fundraising opportunities. Every time he walks into a courthouse, he plays it like a movie scene, complete with a villain, a hero, and a loyal army watching from the sidelines. But there's only so much spin you can put on reality. Wolff makes the point clear. The facts are catching up to the fiction. Financially, Trump is bleeding. The lawsuits are expensive. The fines are growing. Investor confidence is eroding. Banks are distancing themselves. Real estate partners are backing out. And behind the scenes, the empire looks less like a skyscraper and more like a sandcastle collapsing in slow motion. This is what happens when branding collides with reality. When the man who boasted about being the ultimate winner starts losing badly, and when that aura breaks, the people who followed him for strength, for power, for the illusion of certainty, they start to waver. They start to ask, is this really the guy we want leading us into 2020? Into 2020? Into 2020? Especially when the only thing he's leading is a parade of indictments and scandal. Wolff draws the line clear. This isn't just Trump's crisis, it's America's. It's about how the nation responds to lawlessness at the highest level. It's about whether truth still matters, whether lies can still be disqualified, whether a man who defrauded voters, investors, and the system itself can be trusted with power again. Because if Trump returns to office after all of this, what does that say about the state of American democracy, about the media, about the courts, about the voters? And let's be blunt, this moment is historic. Never before has a former U.S. president faced this level of legal scrutiny, while simultaneously running for office again. Never before has a political movement tried to portray criminal accountability as political persecution and succeeded in convincing. That's not just dangerous, it's destabilizing. Wolff warns that we are now in uncharted waters. The institutions designed to preserve democracy, the court, the press, the arbitrators, the electoral system, and so far none of them have fully delivered. And in that vacuum Trump continues to thrive. But that can't last forever. Because even among his base the cracks are forming. The constant chaos, the non-stop scandals, the growing legal bills, it's wearing people down. Not everyone in MAGA world is ready to jump ship, but more and more are starting to look for the lifeboat. You can see it in the polls, in the donuts, in the whispers from party insiders, who once shouted their loyalty, but now hedge their bet. Trump's grip is loosening, slowly, reluctantly, but visibly. And when it breaks, if it breaks, it will not be quiet. Wolff emphasizes that the fall of a political figure like Trump won't just be personal. It will be seismic. It will shake the foundation of American politics. It will split the GOP, redefine future elections, and force a reckoning with every institution that enabled him. The media, the courts, the corporations, the political consultants, the donors, they all played a role in creating this machine. And when it crashes, no one will walk away clean. But that's what makes this moment urgent. Because if Trump escapes accountability, if he dodges conviction, retains influence, and reclaims the presidency, the message to every future leader: the rules don't apply if you're loud enough, rich enough, and shameless enough. And that's how democracies die, not with tanks in the street, but with corruption in plain sight, tolerated until it's too late. Wolff's analysis isn't just about Trump's downfall, it's a warning about what happens if there isn't one. It's about how close the country is to normalizing authoritarian, to shrugging off fraud, to shrugging off fraud, obstruction, and it's about how difficult it will be to recover if that normalization takes hold. Because once you accept that power is above the law, it's almost impossible to put that genie back in the bottle. Every future president will test those limits. Every demagogue will use Trump as a blueprint, and every institution will find it harder to resist the next time. So Trump's legal, political, and financial collapse isn't just a spectacle, it's a test of whether the system can still run. And if it fails, then the damage won't just be reputational, it will be structural, permanent. A shift in what Americans believe their country stands for, and what it tolerates. But it doesn't have to end that way. There's still time. Time for the courts to act decisively. Time for voters to reject the politics of fear and fraud. Time for leaders to stop cowering and start governing. The consequences are clear. Trump is cornered, exposed, and vulnerable. The narrative is crumbling under the weight of facts, law, and consequence. But none of it matters if people don't. The weight of accountability is bearing down on Donald Trump from every direction. Courts, credits, that the rules don't apply, that his base will never leave. But the rules don't apply, that his base will never lose. His lawyers are running out of moves. His donors are watching their investments sink. His party is splintering under the strain of his legal baggage. And now, even the myth can't hold. The myth that Trump is always winning, always a step ahead, always in control, it's shattered. He's not dictating the terms anymore. He's reacting, deflecting, denying, and it's all falling apart in real time. The desperate posts, the courtroom meltdowns, the blame games. They're not signs of collapse. Richard Wolff's analysis makes one thing unmistakably clear. This is not just a man fighting for a police. This is a man trying to survive financially, legally, and psychologically in a system he once manipulated with impunity. But that system is waking up. Now it's our responsibility to keep because if this moment slips away, if the noise drowns out the truth, then Trump won't be the only one to escape justice. The entire apparatus that let him thrive will regroup, reload, and try again. So stay focused, stay loud, stay committed, share this video, subscribe, spread the truth while it still matters. Because this isn't just about one man's downfall, it's about whether we still believe in a country where nobody is above the law.